I know a lot of monolingual English speakers who have a vague wish to learn a language, but who've never managed to stay motivated, and I think a big part of that is that there are too many languages in the world, and it's too easy to start half learning 4 different ones and then giving up on all of them. I also have a following of insane polyglots who, by language 6, are not really sure which one to go for next. So I'm here to tell you what to do, so you don't have to make a decision. 3 caveats before we start. 1, this is about what language to learn, not how to learn it. 2, there might be multiple languages selected for by my requirements at each stage. Actually, there definitely are, but I'm going to say 1 because otherwise I wouldn't be making the choice, would I? 3, this is a guide for English speakers, especially native speakers, but everything I say will of course be affected by your knowledge of other languages. So question 1, do you live in a country or community where you don't speak the native language? If the answer is yes, then learn it, no matter what. This is the language you probably already are learning, and if not, the one you definitely should be. You can survive in most countries with only English, and in many you can live your life. But if you're in Germany and not speaking German, then you are excluding yourself from a lot of the experience of living in Germany. In my opinion, one of the most important things we can do for personal and communal well-being is feeling connected to the physical and social space we occupy, and language is a big, if not the biggest, part of that. You don't want to be stuck just talking to the same circle of internationals while you're in a different country. It will make your time there worse, and frankly, it is kind of disrespectful to the country you've moved to. I don't care if the language is hard, you'll never have a better opportunity to practice it than now. I don't care if everyone speaks English anyway, slowly insert an increasing amount of the language into conversations and everyday interactions until you're good enough to force everyone to speak their native language with you. If you're in Sweden, even if people are telling you that Swedish doesn't matter and that they'd rather just speak English, learn the language out of respect for the people who wouldn't rather speak English, for the culture at large, and for the general health of the language. If you're in the Netherlands, learn Dutch out of spite. I'm not trying to come across as hateful to the people who do live in a community without knowing its language. I know and am friends with such people, but for you, the search for a language is over now, and deep down you already knew it. But if you answered no, then the next question is, do you speak your heritage language? Like, is one side of your family French or something? If no, then learn this one. It's a language you'll get plenty of opportunity to use, it will connect you with your family more, you probably already half know a bunch of words and phrases, you've heard the pronunciation growing up. If this is the case with both sides of your family, like one parent speaks one language and the other speaks a different one, then it's time to choose which parent you prefer. If yes, or you don't have a heritage language, then instead pick the language of your romantic partner and their family. Note I said romantic partner here, not crush. In fact, if your crush speaks any of the languages from this question onwards, then that's an automatic skip. Next, a language your friend group, or much of your friend group speaks, then the language of a really close friend. For both of these, again, you'll have a lot of motivation and opportunity to practice. If none of that applies to you, well, are you one of these hyper-practical freak people who just really wants to learn the most useful language? Before I answer that question, you should ask yourself if you want a hyper-practical way to learn a language from this video. If yes, then you should check out today's video sponsor, italki. italki is a language learning platform which connects teachers and learners so that you can get personalized one-on-one lessons with native speaker teachers. This means that you get the opportunity to improve your listening and speaking skills in the context of a real conversation with a real person, receiving real-time feedback and guidance from language experts. italki lets you book lessons with more than 30,000 experienced teachers of over 150 languages all over the world, keeping learning flexible with a paper lesson policy to fit into your schedule whilst also giving you access to a vast range of languages. So whether you want to learn French, German, Indonesian, or all of the above, you have the resources you need to immerse yourself in different languages and cultures, even if you can't travel abroad. I myself had a go at some Korean with my teacher So Young.
So in English and many other languages, it should be subject, verb, and object, but we have this one, subject, object, verb. So verb or adjective should be at the end of the sentence. So this one, so we don't say, so please give me is 주세요. Can you repeat after me? 주세요.
주세요.
And grapes is 포도.
포도.
We don't say 주세요 포도. We say 포도 주세요.
포도 주세요.
Thanks again to Soyoung for that wonderful lesson, and if you're also looking for a practical way to improve your language skills, click through the link in the description below. If you go to italki now, you can get $5 off your first $10 purchase when you use my exclusive promo code KLEIN. This discount is only available for the first 50 users, so get on that, and thank you to italki for sponsoring this video. Where was I? Oh yes, the most useful language. The thing with this is, as an English speaker, you already speak it. Now, I'm not saying that other languages aren't tangibly quote-unquote useful in business, navigating life, getting a job, whatever it might be, because they certainly are. But what I am saying is that from the English speaker's perspective, there's no real all-rounder that can kind of nebulously help you, because that's generally English. It will be much more specific to the places you want to go and the specific industries you're interested in. I mean, most likely it will be a world language like Spanish, Chinese, French, Portuguese, maybe Arabic or German. But without knowing more details about your life, I couldn't really tell you. The good news is, if you're the kind of hyper-practical person who just wants to get the most useful language under their belt to further their career, or whatever it is you people do, then you probably already know what language it is you should be learning, so go get it done. If you really just want to be able to communicate with the highest number of people in your surroundings, then in Canada this would probably be French, in the US Spanish, in the UK also Spanish, so when you drunkenly bother the locals on Ibiza, at least you can do it in their own language. Next, do you just want to learn a language for the sake of having learned a language? If yes, you probably want to learn the easiest language, which is obviously going to depend a lot on what languages you already know, but from a monolingual English perspective, which are the majority of people who are going to be in this category anyway, we can look at the Category 1 languages. The languages that take the shortest amount of time to learn up to a level 3, which is apparently roughly a C1. These are Danish, Dutch, French, Italian, Norwegian, Portuguese, Romanian, Spanish, and Swedish, according to the US Department of State. All languages which are very similar to English, all Indo-European, so with relatively similar grammar, and all Germanic or Romance, so sharing a lot of vocabulary. If you can get over the initial hurdle of adapting to the sound and pace of the language, then a lot of comprehension is just handed to you for free because of English's Germanic origins and the massive amounts of Romance words it has loaned from French. We can rule out Spanish and French, which take 30 weeks instead of the 24 estimated for the others. This is, of course, assuming you do 23 hours of lessons a week plus 17 hours of self-studies, so if you scale this for your 1 hour lesson a week plus 30 minutes of half-heartedly staring at flashcards, that's 640 weeks, but still. Anyway, I'm glad to see French go. I'm pretty sure the French Foreign Ministry tricked the Americans into putting French as a Category 1 language as a form of psychological warfare. We can eliminate Romanian and Norwegian because they have 3 genders compared to the others 2, and if there's one thing English native speakers love whining about, it's grammatical gender. Dutch is tricky because Standard Dutch pretends to have 3 genders, but it really only has 2, so I'll allow it for now. Now you can choose. Do you want more complicated verb forms or more complicated word order? Verb forms, then it's Italian, because Portuguese seems to me subjectively to be the harder one to pronounce. This is very scientific. Word order, then, well, we're not trying to go for perfect pronunciation here, but I do think Swedish and Danish are harder to pronounce. Yes, Dutch does sound like this.
Laat ik het zo zeggen, er zijn sindsdien wel een paar grijze haren en wat rimpels bijgekomen.
But Danish sounds like this.
Goddag skatte. Jeg skal se lille solskin og lille skønner.
And with Swedish, you have to deal with pitch accent, so tonality, and the SJ sound, which has a dedicated IPA symbol because it's the only language in the world which has it. On the other hand, though, Swedish does have dialects and variants without that sound and without tonemes, and I think the problems with them are more on the production side than the perception side. You know, I've always personally found Swedish very easy to understand. But in all seriousness, I don't think it's that bad. Danish is out though, I only kept it in this far as a joke really. But between Swedish and Dutch, I still think it's Dutch. At first glance, Dutch looks more complicated, you know, it sends the verb to the end in a bunch of constructions and has different singular and plural forms of the verb. But then if you look closer, you realise that Swedish doesn't send the verb to the end in subordinate clauses or infinitive constructions, which makes it even weirder, because instead of just putting it at the end and being done with it, it puts it in the middle, separated from its subject or auxiliary by certain words, called clausal adverbials, but not by others. And then when you get to the verb forms, sure, it doesn't distinguish singular and plural, but it does distinguish the past participle from the supine, and you might not know what that means, but trust me, it's worse. Can you tell which languages I actually know stuff about? All of them. Every single one. Of course, if you're okay with learning loads and loads of vocabulary and that's like fun to you, then I could suggest Indonesian, a very analytic language with very little morphology, and it's still considered a Category 2 language, taking only 36 weeks of intensive study. That puts it on the same level as German. That's right, even though German is one of English's closest living relatives, sharing an enormous number of words with it, the amount of grammar you have to learn for it takes the same amount of time as building up an entire Austronesian vocabulary from scratch. Which, yeah, that's the next question. Do you want to have learned a language, but you want a little bit more respect? A little bit of bragging rights? Seem a little bit cooler than the guy who learned Dutch? Then yeah, it's one of these two. Indonesian for easier grammar, German for easier vocab learning. I guess really the easiest language for English native speakers to learn would be Scots. You know, Scots is English's sister language. They're both descended from Middle English. But I think it's harder to learn anyway because of the depressingly small amount of resources there are for learning it. Okay, new caveat up here. Is Scots available to you, and are you okay with random people denying the fact that you speak a second language? Probably not, because you want the credit. But if yes, then Scots. If none of that applies to you, then take this as a PSA to learn some of your local sign language. If you're in America, ASL, in Britain, BSL, and so on. This is great for being able to communicate with deaf people in your community, obviously, people who you are likely to run into at some point in your life. It shows respect for those people around you so that they don't always have to adapt to you in every situation. But more than that, it will undoubtedly help you in your personal life at some point or another. Even if you don't end up learning the full grammar or don't remember it later in life, just having some basis in the vocabulary and maybe some phrases and structures will allow you to learn it more easily should you ever need it. Your child or grandchild might be born deaf or hard of hearing, and as you get older, even as a non-deaf person, your hearing gets worse. We are all likely to experience hearing loss over the course of our lives. Even as something as simple as just we're all in crowded areas sometimes, where it can be hard to hear important information. Being able to communicate simple sentences or concepts in a systematic way without any auditory component is an invaluable skill. You should learn some sign language and encourage your friends to do so too. I did half a year of German Sign Language. I wish I could have continued, but I'm already so glad for the little I did learn. If you're past this point, you don't just want to learn a language for social reasons. You don't just want to learn it for the sake of having learned one. You are looking for a specific language that will tickle your interests. You're probably either already multilingual and really want that thrill of learning a language again, or you're interested in or studying linguistics and want to pick up some practical knowledge. But there's just too many languages to pick from. Right, then let's narrow it down. Do you want to get some experience with languages that work more differently to English? Things outside of the Indo-European language family that English is part of. This is especially for those linguists who want to broaden their horizons and expose themselves to concepts that might just not come up in the Indo-European family. Then we need to ask ourselves, are you against learning a new script, or rather, let's rephrase that, do you want to learn a new writing system? Because if you don't actively want to, it can be hard to stay motivated. If you don't, then the question is, do you enjoy torturing yourself? Do you like pain and suffering? If not, then I suggest Swahili, which works differently from Indo-European languages with its prefix-oriented noun-class system and agglutinative morphology, but is still considered a Class 2 language, so still no harder than German apparently. If you like pain and suffering, then how much? If you want to feel your head hurting, your muscles ache, your brainstem start to cramp, but then get to breathe a sigh of relief as the structures finally make sense in your brain, then go with Turkish or Finnish. Finnish if you like the snow, Turkish if you don't. If you really enjoy the feeling of blood pooling in your ears and dripping down in puddles as you attempt to learn how to form a basic sentence, then learn Basque. But okay, you want to learn a new writing system. Then the question is, do you hate yourself? If no, learn Korean. It's hard, of course, but it at least fundamentally respects the time of its learners. If yes, it's time for Chinese. Chinese is not that bad. I only ever studied it for a year, but even in that time, building and deconstructing sentences became this satisfying, almost algorithmic exercise where there's one right answer in this super analytic structure. You do need to know what a topic is, but I think it's quite intuitive to grasp as you see more and more examples, though admittedly maybe I'm just saying this because my native language also uses a lot of topic comment structures. Either way, Chinese grammar does have its quirks, but it's satisfying and fast to learn. Tones do pose a problem, especially at the start, but all languages have some tricky stuff in their phonology. The issue is the writing system. Learning the character for every new word you learn slows down the process so much. You have to be willing to sacrifice your friendships, your joy, your soul. There is no such thing as free time anymore. There is only endless lines of the same character written over and over again until you fall asleep dreaming about it and you've still probably forgotten it the next morning. So what if you want to learn a new writing script, but more for the sake of learning a new script in and of itself, but more English-like grammar is fine, or even positive? Then, which of these shapes do you prefer? If you like the swirly one, well done, you picked Persian. If you like the angular one, you're learning Ukrainian now. And finally, do you want to start a successful YouTube channel? If no, then learn German apparently, because if you learn Old English, you'll get more bloody subscribers. I think that covers all people, right? Oh, what's that? You have another question? Oh, you really like anime, you say. You really like certain video games and manga and anime and stuff, and you really want to know what language you should learn? We both know you already have one in mind, and if you just don't stick to learning it for more than a week, then that's a problem of commitment, not choice. If you want to learn Japanese for those reasons, then you can. Anyway, yes, I'm done. If I didn't mention your language, I'm sorry. There's a lot of them. I hope you enjoyed the video. It's the closest I will ever come in my life to making a joke.